Hello and welcome into episode 10 of the Stomp the Bus show. I am Mark Harris with my co-host Colton Dodgson coming to us from Mars. I like the red glow. How's it going, bud?
Yeah, they call me Elon Musk. Not bad. I didn't sleep through this podcast, so that's always a win to wake up in time.
We've all
Yeah,
been
so
there.
happy to be back on the show. I'm sure the last one went excellent when you were flying solo and everything. So, but I'm happy. I'm happy to be here for you, Mark. That's why I do it.
Yeah, I definitely didn't repeat myself a bunch of times at all, but made it through
I
barely.
watch every episode. I'm
Yeah,
always in the lab trying to hone and perfect my craft. So.
that's right. What's funny is in the last episode I shot on using the my computer's like camera tool, and the file was so big, like it would have taken YouTube like a whole day to upload it. So I had to shoot it again using Zoom. And when I recorded alone with Zoom, it was fine. So
Yeah,
anyway,
if only Pied Piper was real.
Pied, I was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a."
Yeah, a little
I almost said
contraction.
workaholics. I'm a Silicon Valley reference, but
Yeah,
anyway, ASU lost over the weekend to Oklahoma State, and it's kind of a weird game because it wasn't as the game itself wasn't as lopsided as the final score indicates, right?
yeah, definitely. I think I believe it was like late in the third quarter. ASU cut it down to a one touchdown game.
It was early in the fourth.
Okay, so like
So
right
if so
near.
if you say that ASU made it a game in the fourth quarter, you're not lying because they made it. I want to get the exact.
Yeah, it was just an issue of them
Yeah,
falling apart.
14-25, first 30. It was like probably like the second play in the fourth quarter, but yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, I had a few beverages at that point. So obviously the minutia of the whole ordeal um, is kind of fuzzy. But I'm pulling up the box score now. I can tell you that I did have A&M minus 19 and a half, which was
oh
ridiculous.
no,
I
you got
also
Notre
had
Dame.
BYU minus
Okay,
3.5, but I also parlayed it with the over. So anytime a game goes to double
that
overtime,
was
it stays
46.
under. What?
What was the over? Because the final score is 40 would be 46 total
Yeah,
added.
it was, I want to say it was like 53 and a half.
Oh,
So obviously hoping for those touchdowns and then, um,
it's
the,
tough.
yeah, because you need Baylor to score and then miss a 2-point conversion so that they can go again. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was a nightmare. But anytime you get to two overtimes and stay under, that's asinine. But here, I finally found the box score so I can stop talking about my misfortune as a means to fill time.
Filibustering.
Yes. So, yeah, Elijah Badger made it 20 to 17 in the fourth
Yep.
quarter. So obviously, cut it down to 3 points. And I mean, was ASU was within, let's see, 17-3 in the second quarter, right before half. X Valade scores and cuts it to a one-score game.
Yep.
They stayed in it for most of the game in a
Well,
hostile environment. And
yep.
what
And
were you
they
gonna say?
stayed in it despite look, they were way too conservative, especially in the second quarter and parts of it, like where they would just run it three times in a row. I mean, I know we're a running team, but you can't do that. Like, especially when there were big portions of this game where they just weren't creating wide holes, And now they did run it a little bit better on the touchdown drive. I think Valde had a big run somewhere later in the game. Um, and then Oklahoma State, well, I mean, they're a good team. They're not like I said, they aren't like world beaters, but they're definitely a good team, better team than ASU. And I'll give them credit, like that last Hail Mary, not Hail Mary, flea flicker they called on the ensuing drive after ASU scored a touchdown. That was a really good play call. Like they dialed it up at the exact right time, and it worked. So, and I think ASU covered the deep man, and that's why Sanders hit the guy running the crosser too. So it's like They even kind of defended it somewhat well.
Yeah, and obviously OSU spread covers the spread, so that's never good, especially if you were taking the Devils as dogs there.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, a pretty close game. I mean, didn't get out of hand until 7:41 in the fourth quarter. Obviously, the flea flicker kind of took the wind out of the sails there, and it kind of felt like that was,
Yeah.
the nail in
That
the
was that was
coffin.
a death blow. They at that
Yeah,
point, I think I texted you this. That like at that point, you're just hoping to cover.
exactly. Yeah,
That's
it
it.
was over. It was over at that point. But still stayed in there. I mean, obviously going to Stillwater, that's where it is, right?
Yep. Yep.
I never know with these college towns, but yeah, Stillwater, and making it a game for 3 quarters, and some change.
50
Huh.
minutes. You know.
Yeah, defense played really well
Yeah.
until the fourth quarter.
So I
So
want to talk about that. The defense played incredible. I don't care that they scored 34. Well, okay, incredible is a little too strong. The defense played very well and incredible, especially in the first half. And I know they gave up 17 points in the first half. Did they give up 17? Yes, they did.
I
All the
think my
second quarter.
biggest my
But
biggest beef with the defense, there was a couple of just ridiculous penalties,
well,
which
the
would
one, yeah, the one on there was one on one of their drives in the second quarter that was a roughing the passer that was like super obvious. And
yeah, I think that
I'm
happened
okay
twice.
with ones that are ticky tacky, but not ones that are like, yeah, you can't do that, you know?
And I think that happened twice where whoever was applying pressure after the ball was clearly out of Spencer Sanders'
Yeah.
hands, just like picked him up and threw him, or just like pushed him for no reason. And it's like those are the moments that continue to plague this team. And obviously, they weren't necessarily backbreaking, but there were definitely some moments where penalties that
Yeah.
you
10 for
think
95
differently.
yards.
Yeah, you think differently in that moment. I mean, or
Yeah.
you're a little more disciplined in that moment. Who knows? Maybe they don't go on a scoring drive in the second quarter or whatever it
Or they
is.
just kick a field goal instead of getting a touchdown.
Right, right. Those calls are the difference. And I
Yeah.
saw a
No, they
couple
are.
of them where, I mean, football is obviously, you just mentioned it. It's a very, violent game as it is. You're gonna have moments where those ticky tack calls and officials are trying to, make their presence felt or whatever it is.
Right, right.
But those obvious lapses where guys are just throwing quarterbacks and stuff, they just can't happen. And
Yeah.
that was something that stood out as like that's what you need to clean up. And who knows what the game? If Oklahoma State probably still wins this game, but
Right,
is it much closer in the fourth quarter if somebody pulls up at the last second instead of lowering a shoulder
yeah.
into Spencer Sanders? Who knows? But
Well, so yeah, about the penalties, like it didn't feel like the BYU game from last year because a lot of these penalties, the thing that I think really incenses fans is like procedural penalties, like false start penalties. Um, I think a lot of times fans can like get over, especially in college because it's only a 15-yard penalty. Like the borderline pass interference penalty that gets thrown. And I think ASU had a few of those in this game. It was dead. Like, don't get me wrong, 10 penalties, no matter how it happens, is bad and not acceptable. But it's also not like I didn't have the same feeling watching the game this time as I did last year. And granted, some of that is just I just don't have as high of expectations for this team as I do last year's team. And so
right, I
I
think
think
that
if you're
that is like a complete anomaly though. That game against BYU is like
yeah, that was so bad. I don't even
completely
want to get
unheard
into it,
of.
but yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
but that's what I'm saying is like something like this obviously isn't going to be as bad as that because that was so astronomically
right,
bad.
right. Yeah.
But there was still those and procedural penalties and stuff like that are I mean, that stadium is extremely difficult to play in and everything like that. But those are ultimately still discipline penalties, right?
Right.
You have to be prepared for that situation. You have to know what you're going into. You have to understand that like work out some sort of system so you're not jumping off sides every or
And they didn't really do
committing
that in
false
this
start
game.
penalties.
Yeah.
No, no, no. I'm saying
Yeah,
in,
yeah.
in the BYU game, those are
Right.
those are also discipline penalties, and we saw those in this game as
Yeah.
well
Yeah.
with those roughing the passer calls. So it seems like it hasn't bitten them as hard this year, and maybe that has a little bit to do with the level of experience that's on this roster as opposed to last year. But you're still seeing it, obviously, in a little more, I guess, in a little more modest of a
Right.
dose than
Well,
last
and
year, but it's still making an impact.
and that's why I'm not super upset about it because, like you said, I don't think it was the difference in them winning the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it cost them,
Yeah.
the last drive, but still, you wonder, and it's like
Well,
when
yeah.
penalties, like you said, if it's a ticky tack call where it's like, okay, there is some contact, it could have gone either way, whatever. Then it's like, okay, that's just the nature of the game. But when you're watching a guy fully extend after the ball is clearly out of a quarterback's hands,
Yeah.
and
No. Believe. Yeah.
it's clearly like a frustration thing, then that's where it really costs you, and it prolonged drives, like their
Well. Yeah. For
defense
sure.
the defense sort of commanded the or sort of I don't know, ran the show a little bit in the beginning, played extremely well, sort of dominated the tempo of the game a little bit. It seemed like every time OSU got the ball back, ASU was there to shut them down or whatever. But then, if those drives are prolonged by penalties like the ones that we saw there early in that game, I think they were both in the first half. It's hard to continuously stall drives when you're giving teams more and more opportunities. So
100%. I think the play you're talking about, and I got it pulled up on the drive chart here. This is in the second quarter. The score is at this point, uh, it is 10-3 right now, Oklahoma State. So if you end up holding them to, I don't know what that noise is, but
my ads are muted, but
oh
every time it refreshes, it like plays for a second. It's annoying. I don't know what to
yeah,
do, but it just keeps happening.
yeah, I don't know. It's fine.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's all good.
at this point in the game, Oklahoma State is up 10-3, and they're facing a 3rd and 10 on ASU's 43-yard line. So this is like kind of the last chance before they get into field goal range type of territory. They had a run for no gain and an incomplete pass. 3rd and 10.
Sorry. There we go.
No problem. Anyway, it was, I believe, it was an incomplete on that 3rd and 10, but like we were
Dude,
talking
I'm
about,
having some
roughing the
tough
passer.
technical difficulties. Here we go. I think I
Yeah.
got it.
Okay.
See if that
Anyway,
works.
on that 3rd and 10 play,
Oh my god.
the internet
Dude,
gremlins
I have it muted.
do not want us to talk about this individual play.
No, I know. Go ahead. It should be fine now, I think.
No, it's fine. Anyway, 3rd and 10, ASU 43, 9 minutes left in the fourth, basically. And I believe it was an incomplete pass, but they get the first down because it was a roughing the passer on Joe Moore, who's been good this year for ASU. Like it's a young player mistake. Like, and that extended the drive, and they take a 17-3 lead in the halftime, and that's just a lot more.
Yeah.
Oh
Also
wait,
a
no, I
fumble.
was looking at
I
something
forgot
else.
about the fumble in the first quarter that set up the first Oklahoma State scoring drive. And that's gonna happen, but it seems like after that fumble, it's OSU touchdown, ASU punt, OSU touchdown, ASU punt, OSU field goal. That kind of just opened the floodgates. It all happened after that ex Valade fumble,
Yeah,
which is unfortunate.
but
And obviously, it's not like that's
that
the
didn't change
reason
the
they
game.
lost the game, but that very well could have served as a momentum swing right there.
Right.
3rd and 1, ex Valade about to run, uh, has a shot at the first down, fumbles the ball,
Yeah.
and then
No, it was
OSU
bad.
picks it, and that's deep in ASU territory too. It's that ball's recovered on the ASU 39, so a
Yeah.
short field for the Cowboys, and it's just ASU punt after ASU punt. It wasn't until the second quarter that they made it.
Well, and look,
Yeah.
like you get to the point, like especially early on in this game, ASU's drives, field goals, 8 plays, 78 yards. That was a great first drive, but they missed an opportunity to go up 7-0 early. And Emory Jones played a pretty good game, but he missed Messiah Swinson on a post route in the end zone, just kind of threw it a little bit behind him. And that's 4 points off the board, and then the next possession, punt, next possession, punt, next possession after an interception, punt, after, and then they fumble, and now, okay, Oklahoma State scores on a 37-yard drive. ASU's only down 7-3, punt on the next drive. And then this is the one, Oklahoma State goes 12 plays for 96 yards in 3 minutes, and they go up 14-3 with 2:45 left in the first half. ASU punted after that one too, and then this is the drive I was talking about where it was 2nd and 10 at the 50. Spencer Sanders passing complete. It was the Joe Moore he pushed him on his back.
Yeah.
And so, but the thing is, like, ASU just flat out needed to score more early in the game when they had the momentum, because it would have given them a bigger lead earlier on. Like, even if they had just gotten 10 points, that you score the first touchdown, and then maybe on one of their other ensuing drives in the first quarter, you get a field goal. Not only does that give you obviously more than 3 points at halftime, it gives your defense more time to rest, and a more rested defense throughout this game holds Oklahoma State under 34 points. Like, there's no way that they score as much as they do. That you could, and look at the drives here. After the first drive, 8 plays, 78 yards. Second drive, they start on their own 28, and they get to the Oklahoma State 44. 5 plays, 31 yards. If they had gotten like 10, 15, 13 more yards on that drive, then you're within reasonable field goal range. So then you could have gone up 10-0. But then the next drives, 3 plays, 6 yards, 5 plays, 19 yards, 3 plays, 7 yards fumble, 5 plays, 22 yards.
Yeah.
3 plays, -4 yards. And then end of half, 1 play, -1 yard. And then in the second half, they were moving the ball a lot better to come out of the half, although they did have some 3-and-outs as well.
What's interesting, and since you pointed out that 12-play, 96-yard drive, I started looking at it a little more. Even on the previous touchdown drive, Oklahoma State's first touchdown drive, it's Dominic Richardson run, Spencer Sanders run, Dominic Richardson run. It's all running the ball. They had no.
Their passing attack was not like
it wasn't. It was not. It was basically non-existent. It wasn't
the end
getting
of the game.
them
It was more, but
early, and then once you get to this 12-play, 96-yard drive here, Spencer Sanders.
So he had a great pick. I mean, for a linebacker, already to have 2 picks, like he's played very well. Like, I think he was named
he
like
has had a couple good games. But you get to this 12-play drive here, and it's Richardson run for no gain. Spencer Sanders completes a pass for 9 yards, but then it's just run. And once you get to not the pass interference call, although that prolongs the drive as well, it would have been 3rd and 3 at the Oklahoma State 24 had there not been, a penalty called. But you keep going down the list here. It's a run play. Spencer Sanders incomplete. You can go down until the roughing the passer call, where he was obviously shoved out of bounds. And that seems to sort of, I don't know if that like jump started him a little bit. I don't know if that played a bit of a mental role on getting him fired up.
A lot of times.
That's what I'm saying. It's like getting him fired up or knocking the rust off a little bit. Maybe he's like, okay, I got it. Who knows what mental role that penalty played? But you can look at that penalty, and every play after that penalty, he's 19 yards to Bryson Green. Obviously, another incomplete pass, but then things kind of open up a little bit. Obviously, there's another penalty on the field goal drive. But yeah, who knows? Maybe that intensity picked up a little bit after that penalty, and that had another impact. But that's just another layer.
And the thing is, like, to go on the road and beat a team like this, you need to play like a complete game. And so that's why I mentioned on that first drive, Emory Jones has to hit Swinson in the end zone for a touchdown on that play.
Yeah.
You need to get the points you can get them, and you also can't give them second chances like these roughing the passer penalties. And I look, I get that not all roughing the passer penalties are the same in terms of their severity, but the one that we are bringing up, it was just so obvious, and there was no like no gray area. But anyway, one thing I do want to mention, Elijah Badger. This was his breakout game. I mean, he looked awesome,
Yeah,
and Emory Jones definitely not his best game, but he looked pretty good. I mean, I think they should have thrown the ball more. It seemed like I know he went 12 for 24, 223 yards and a touchdown, no picks. Maybe I'm remembering the game wrong, but it felt like at times they needed to lean on his arm and his legs a little bit more. No designed runs, I don't really remember for Emory Jones, maybe one or two, but um, so we'll see. But Valde, 21 carries, 118 yards. He had a good game. And then hey, Giovanni Sanders, he led the team in receiving. He had the big play uh, in the third quarter, getting wide open, almost scoring a really long touchdown. I mean, this is a great story for him. He's former JUCO guy, walk on, and now he has a full scholarship. He wasn't even really doing that much on the team last year. And now he's maybe their second best receiver. So good
yeah,
for
definitely.
him.
And I remember in the offseason we were talking about possible guys who were going to step up, and I remember talking about the Vanderbilt guy quite a bit.
Yeah, he hasn't done much.
He hasn't, he didn't even show up on the box score in this game. But we also talked about the younger guys, and obviously mentioned Elijah Badger as a possible guy. But I felt like I felt like there was going to be somebody who sort of came out of nowhere, and maybe Giovanni Sanders is that guy. There was a lot of
Yeah,
opportunity for it, with no clear sort of uh, guy who was going to take over in the passing game. So having another option is definitely good. ESPN needs to fix their ads, man. This is insane. I'm
yeah.
getting off this page so it doesn't happen anymore.
No, it's
But
fine.
yeah, and obviously Messiah Swinson and all these guys. So it's good to see options
Yeah,
start to like develop and things like that. And it's nice to have a game like that early on in the season, where these guys have to go into a hostile environment and sort
face
of,
adversity. Yeah,
yeah, face adversity, grow on the fly, so to speak. And
yeah.
now they go in and play Eastern Michigan. And I told you this was my favorite betting spot for ASU on the season. Getting 20 points against Eastern Michigan still doesn't feel like that much. So
No, I know.
I can tell you I will probably be betting ASU against the spread in this game.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Um.
Oklahoma State did their job for me. I appreciate it.
So one thing we talked about them facing a hostile environment. I felt like this ASU team, even though they didn't, maybe I'm just pulling this out of thin air, but I feel like they responded better to adversity in this game than they did last year, even though they didn't win. Um,
Definitely.
I mean, you can see it on the defense. Like even I get it. They allowed 34 points in the end, but 14 of those were in the fourth quarter when they were just gassed because
Hmm.
the offense just wasn't effective due to being a mid-tier Power Five talented offense and, in my personal opinion, being way too conservative at certain points in the game.
Right. And you have to play complementary. If you don't, you're really hanging one side of the
Yeah,
ball out to
yeah.
dry, and that's what happened.
Again, against a good team, I think Oklahoma State's. I think they're up to like number 8 in the AP poll now. I mean, granted, it's early, but that there is a chance. There is a chance that is the best team ASU plays all year. I don't think it. I think USC when they play USC, that'll be the best team. But maybe I mean this is probably one of the. I don't have the ASU schedule up in front of me right now, but it's probably at least in the top 2 of toughest defenses they'll play because
Definitely.
USC's defense is not as good as this. I mean,
Yeah,
saw that over the weekend as well.
yeah, and I mean, obviously playing Utah, I don't have their defensive numbers in front of me, but that would
Yeah,
be the only
it'll either
way.
be Oklahoma State or Utah, but you're playing
Yeah,
Oklahoma State on the road, and you're not as
yeah,
familiar with them.
no, for sure.
And
That
granted,
that
they're not as familiar with you either, so it goes both ways.
Yeah, and I think the season is kind of shaping up exactly how we thought it might when we did our little schedule prediction thing.
Yeah,
I think obviously they'll roll in this game, and then Utah, it's going to be extremely interesting. That's a compelling game, I
yeah,
think.
it's more
Uh,
compelling. Look, I said they don't have a chance at winning. I still kind of believe that, but it's going to be much more compelling than I thought it was going to be entering the year. And some of that's because Utah's a smidge worse than I thought they were going to be, but also ASU is probably a smidge better than I thought they were going to be. So that's a good point. Like I had them going 6-6, you had them going 7-5. Looking through this team through the prism of they're going to be like in terms of the record a fairly average Power 5 team, they are moving along swiftly. Now, if it that's kind of to their benefit that they have such low expectations. People are picking them to go 3-9, worse in the Pac-12, which that's not going to happen because of Colorado. Holy cow! Colorado. For those of you who don't know, Colorado lost 41-10 to Air Force last week, and I think their quarterback went 5 of 21 passing. So,
I think Colorado might have been favored in that game too.
No, they weren't.
Oh, they weren't.
Air Force was a 17-point favorite.
Oh, okay.
It was in Air Force,
maybe I read it backwards.
Yeah, dude.
For some reason, I don't know. Yeah, but anyway, they're terrible.
Like I get that ASU football right now is definitely not, at 100% full strength in terms of how it could be operating, but Colorado is like at 0% because they don't play an FCS team this year either. Colorado was their lowest level game, and they might be the best team in the Mountain West. They already lost to TCU, and then this week they have Minnesota, who's a good team, might win the Big Ten West, and then they have a Pac-12 schedule. So,
does Colorado win a game this year?
No, I want to. Let me pull up their schedule real quick.
You got Minnesota, then UCLA, then U of A.
They're not beating either of those teams.
No, then U of A, which I don't think they're beating.
No, I don't. Look, it would be hilarious if they did beat U of A. I will be rooting for them to beat U of A, but they will not beat U of A.
That's in Tucson.
No, there's no chance.
And then Cal I can't speak. Cal in Boulder.
I give them like a 15% chance to win. Like I can conceivably believe they win that game, but
Cal is their only shot. Looking at this schedule, it goes Cal, Oregon State, ASU, Oregon, USC, Washington, Utah. Cal is their only shot to win a game this season if they don't beat Minnesota, and I don't think they are.
No. So not only that, in this version of the schedule, they also didn't miss Oregon and Washington from the north. Like how ASU misses Oregon this year. They don't play them.
Yeah.
And Cal has to play both Oregon and Washington. Both going to be good.
This is a brutal schedule.
That is absolutely brutal.
This schedule is like insane.
Yeah, it's tough. So
I wonder if there's a bet on a team to go 0-13.
Maybe on some overseas books. But
gotta hit up Connor at Bet Rivers.
Yeah, I bet he could find something. Give you a custom bet.
Yeah.
So ASU, look, they're kind of on the same pace. I'd say they're on a little bit better pace than kind of we both expected through two games. It was a game in the fourth quarter against Oklahoma State, and that is not a fan saying it. Like obviously we're fans and we want them to win in general, but that would look. It was 20-17 in the fourth quarter against what is now a top 10 team. Don't throw any parades about it. You still lost. You still got doubled up in the scoreboard, but I'm not like I looking at the reaction on Twitter, people were kind of having the same reaction we had. No one really expected them to win, and it's all about just how are you going to look when you play, the kind of the mid-tier teams on your schedule, when you play Washington State, when you play Oregon State, who maybe isn't mid-tier, they're too, but U of A.
Hey, watch your mouth about Oregon State, man. They've been my cash cow so far.
Yeah,
Vegas hasn't caught up. Vegas hasn't caught up with Oregon State yet.
Dude, Oregon State is so fun to watch.
Yeah, keep riding the Oregon State.
Their tight end is good too. Musgrave, he's a beast.
Yeah, that Boise State game. Once they were at a pick last weekend.
Well, they should have been at a pick. It took to the last play of the game for them to win.
Yeah, but that was like, it felt like too much of a layup. I don't know. I just have, and obviously it came down to the last play. But going into that game, I was like, "There's no way. This is too easy." But I think Vegas will catch up eventually, and we won't. You know, the train will stop rolling. But
Yeah,
until it does, ride Oregon State until the wheels fall off.
I believe it. Um,
The
so
Montana
anyways,
State Bobcats. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
wrapping up this Oklahoma State discussion. ASU is kind of for this individual season of go 6-6, go 7-5. They kind of look on track to do that. The defense looks good. Like this game could have been a lot worse. Like the defense really held them in there for a lot of times. Like they made life difficult for Oklahoma State early on in the game when they weren't gassed. So anyway, 1-1 after 2 weeks. Pretty much everyone expected that. And now we are off to Eastern Michigan. Um, Eastern Michigan also enters the game at 1-1. I looked up their first win. They beat. It was
Wait,
Denver
that's a home game, isn't it?
for ASU.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you,
it's
you
this
said
Saturday. I'll be
off to
going to the game.
Eastern
It's Saturday
Michigan.
night. I think it's
So I
like
was like,
Saturday.
no, I know. You just said off to Eastern Michigan, so you threw me.
Oh yeah, that was like a
Oh, like a
Bill
Belichick thing?
Belichick, like an on to Cincinnati. Yeah,
Okay. Hey, be a little more clear.
yeah. Sorry. Uh, I'm sorry. Uh,
There's a little reference,
yeah, inside joke. Anyway,
which are
Eastern
great for
Michigan.
podcasts.
Yeah, Eastern Michigan 1-1 as well, coming out of the MAC. They beat uh, Eastern Kentucky, which is an FCS team, in week 1, 42-34. So they gave up 34 points to an FCS team, and then they went to Louisiana on the road and got beat 49-21. So, like I said earlier, this is a mid-tier of 5 team, and ASU should beat them by 20 plus points, like they're favored to do.
Lay the points.
Yeah. Game starts 8 o'clock Arizona time on the Pac-12 network. Good, good, good game to put on the Pac-12 network, I would say. Eastern Michigan also had 10 penalties last week, 10 for 85 yards. Louisiana had 12 for 115 and won by 28 points. Eastern Michigan gave up 459 total yards, 149 on the ground, 310 through the air. So they're not very good. You know, they went 7-6 last year. So they're just kind of like they're making bold, like they're just kind of one of those they're one of those group of 5 teams that plays on like the very first like 5 few bowl games, like the Bad Boy Mowers Bowl or the Bowl in the Bahamas, which would actually be like one of the
Bad
best
boy
bowl games to
Mowers
go
Bowl.
to. Dude, you know that's a real bowl.
No, I'm aware. I'm
Yeah,
aware. It's an excellent name.
yeah. It's all these random bowls. Like I think there's a bowl that's in like Shreveport every year.
The Mark Harris Speedo Torpedo Bowl or what?
I'd be down.
Yeah.
First the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl, then the Mark Harris Speedo Torpedo Tacoma Bowl.
There we go. And it's played in the Tacoma Dome.
There, yeah, dude, you could exactly have it in the Tacoma Dome, and you could, it wouldn't matter that it's December in Western Washington.
Did the Seahawks ever play in the Tacoma Dome?
No, I don't think so. But the Sonics did it was the 1994 season when they were renovating. They were renovating Key Arena for a little.
Climate Pledge Arena.
Obviously, they didn't do a good enough job renovating it because they had to leave because of said arena. So
Yeah, imagine your arena so bad, a team decides Oklahoma would be a more suitable location.
yeah, unfortunately, I don't have to imagine it.
Yeah. You lived it.
Thanks a lot, David Stern, for letting that happen, but then blocking the Kings from moving to Seattle. Thanks a lot, bud. Anyway,
It's an NBA podcast now.
yeah. Eastern Michigan quarterback Taylor Powell. He's a senior. Threw for 317 yards and a touchdown, but also threw for 3 interceptions. So ASU's defense should be able to get some interceptions off this guy. ASU should boat race them in this game. And one thing I want to see is the ASU needs to use this game as an opportunity to get more in-game reps for the passing game with Emory Jones, because you're not going to be able to beat USC just only running the ball, or Utah for that matter.
Yeah, I feel like from what I've seen out of USC, maybe I guess I really only watched them in that Rice game. I was preoccupied last weekend with some other terrible games.
I think in the Stanford game they scored because that game, I think that game was going on as the ASU game was going on, so I didn't watch it.
Yeah, here, I'm gonna look it up real quick.
I think they scored touchdowns on their first 5 drives. So.
Oh, okay, but this is what I was gonna say is they still gave up 28 points.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean 14 in the fourth quarter when the game's already 35-14. But you can score on USC.
Oh, totally.
It can happen. It's not impossible.
But they'll score on
they're
you.
obviously going to score a ton
Yeah.
too. That's a given. But I feel like ASU has the advantage defensively against USC.
Yeah, ASU 100% has a better defense. The question is the gap between the ASU defense as big as the gap between the USC offense and the ASU offense? Because obviously USC has a better offense than ASU does.
Yeah.
And USC's offense is still going to be the best of those 4 units in that game. But how much worse is the USC defense on the other side? That's really
you're definitely going to need to force turnovers, and you're going to need to capitalize on those turnovers. And who knows if they're going to be able to do that? So,
yeah. Well, anyway, regarding Eastern Michigan, just beat them and beat them by 30 points. You can cover the spread very easily. I will be at the game, and I don't want for any sort of close halftime shenanigans with this team. It doesn't look like they're too injured. Obviously, aside from the guys who are out from the season, that being Michael Matus, Jacob Newell, and Joey Ramos. Looking at sundevilsource.com, Bro Torrance, who left the Oklahoma State game with an injury, he observed practice but did not practice. Ed Woods as well, another cornerback. He started in the NAU game. And then 2 other backup defensive players as well. So not too bad on the injury front. Hopefully it stays that way for ASU. And honestly, don't force Ro Torrance back in this game. Need to. So.
Yeah, this seems like a good week to maybe let him recover a little bit. Look at your depth, see what happens, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Anyway, on to some off the field stuff with the Pac-12. Earlier, this was actually last week, September 6th. ASU Ray Anderson, they have he has a show on 98.7 here in Phoenix with ASU play-by-play guy Tim Healy. So it's more of like a Sun Devil athletics type show. It's but still can be interesting information there. On that show that's on Arizona Sports, and you can listen to it on their website. He and I got this, by the way. I saw this on the Pac-12 Apostles Twitter page, so I do want to give credit to that. But anyway, he basically said about that the upcoming TV deal should be known in the next month or so. So I give it till, let's see where we're at Halloween. That's a month and a half from now. So that should be interesting. He said he's not, quote, overly concerned, unquote, about teams leaving. So team's confident. We'll see. And then basically really strongly hinted at expansion of the conference. Will that be picking off some Big 12 teams, or will it just be kneecapping the Mountain West and getting all their best programs? And also of note, kind of, is that the Mountain West commissioner stepped down today. So he had been their commissioner for like 20 years too. So
interesting stuff. Let's see who gets poached.
Yeah, it's interesting. And, like we said earlier this year, at least with ASU, if Pac-12 does fall apart, you always got the Big 12 to go to. Um, but I think the Pac-12, even if they don't get quite as much money as they hope, um, the thing about staying together is now that the college football playoff has 6 automatic bids for the top 6 conference champions, that means that you have a better chance to actually possibly get to the playoff if within the Pac-12 and you stay within this conference. Um, so and the teams from the Mountain West would still go because they would still be getting so much more money. I mean, the difference between the revenue gap between the Power Five is huge between the Group of Five, and so they would
So
like Boise State would come to the Pac-12, San Diego State would come to the Pac-12, Fresno
that's
State
what I
would
was
come.
saying. Fresno State, Boise State, San Diego State, all possible.
Yep. And for,
Contenders.
like Fresno State has a real fan base too. Like,
Yeah, definitely. That Fresno State Oregon State game last weekend was like insane, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
So,
no, that was a really fun game to watch. Like, not all Mountain West schools are created the same when it comes to like fan backing and even like tradition for that matter. Like, it's not like we're adding like New Mexico or Wyoming, like those
yeah.
schools. There's no growth potential at those schools to actually become like a functional member of a bigger conference, and like the same way that Utah has done. You think about
Yeah.
it, like what's the difference between Utah and San Diego State? They're both programs uh, that are in like the biggest program in a fairly large market, right? Uh, and they've both been good as they entered into the bigger conference. So I feel like San Diego State's almost certain, but I'm just the other thing this Ray Anderson kind of quote that interested me is he just seemed very confident about it. Like it seems like I mean and he should have inside information. He's the freaking AD. Um, but it seems like they're they don't seem worried about it, which I guess is good because I'm fine with going to the Big 12 if we have to, but I'm also not like pushing for it,
Yeah. I think there might be sort of a an arms race that forms between the Big 12 and the Pac-12 maybe, especially
Dude,
with
there
this
already
mountain.
is.
Yeah,
I wish
especially with this
I wish they would
Mountain
just
West
merge
stuff.
together, but I guess now that there's the playoff bids go by conference, there's no point in
Yeah,
doing
and I mean, there would be 4 conferences, right? In that case, there wouldn't be another Power Five, like a fifth
it.
conference that steps up and fills that void for the conference that ceases to exist. I think all 5 of those conferences are really trying to stand on their own, and
Definitely.
figure it out. Obviously, the Big 12 poached a couple of those schools, in the wake of Oklahoma and Texas leaving. So they're growing in strength. It makes sense for the Pac-12 to follow suit and go straight to the Mountain West and grab some of those. I'm looking at the teams here. I'm looking at Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State. Even like Utah State stands out a little bit with the rivalry with. I mean, obviously
Yeah.
being in
The
Utah, that
one the school I've heard mentioned actually is the like not heard from just seen like reported about as like a potential fourth school is SMU because that would get you into Texas. And even though they don't have a huge fan base in Texas, they do have like a lot of money, and so that's how they could grow because they obviously have NIL deals up the wazoos.
what conference is SMU in?
They're
They're
in
in
the
the
American. They're in the
American. That's
conference
what.
that Houston and Cincinnati are leaving. They're the basically them and Memphis are the 2 best programs left in that conference.
Yeah, that makes
And you
sense.
wouldn't add Memphis. That's ridiculous.
It would kind of follow the trajectory too, with the Big 12 talking about how their goal is to start poaching teams out west. It would make sense for the
Right.
Pac-12 to start
Well, and
poaching people up
SMU
under
would,
them.
yeah, and I think SMU would join because they wanted to get in the Big 12 last year, but probably TCU probably didn't want them in because they share the same market. So we'll
Yeah,
see. It's going to be in the thick of the season when we're not even thinking about it, and then that's when the news will break. But who knows how it's going to wind up, and what the TV deal will look like. But I guess if you're out there hoping that the Pac-12 survives and you kind of keep the same general trips, for a lack of a better phrase, like you're probably in luck when you combine this kind of news along with the news of the expanded playoff that comes with the automatic bids for conference. So that's that. And then one more thing I wanted to talk about because over the weekend, Scott Frost, or actually not, I think it was on Monday, or maybe it was on Sunday, I don't know. But shortly after Nebraska fell to the Clay Helton-led Georgia Southern, I think they're the Eagles.
Wait, they really lost that game? I didn't even look.
Yes, they lost they lost to Georgia Southern.
That's crazy.
The Sun Belt went into Nebraska and beat Nebraska, went into Notre Dame and won, and then obviously went into Texas A&M. That's freaking.
Well, there's the conference that's going to step up for the Pac-12 when they get poached by the Big 12.
Yeah, that's why the Pac-12 needs they have to fend off the Sun Belt. But anyway, Scott Frost is now fired, and now with the fired list, there's always the potential name. Who's going to be the next coach at Nebraska? Is kind of what a lot of the college football world is wondering. Pete Thamel for ESPN tweets out names to watch for Nebraska: Matt Campbell, Mark Stoops, Dave Aranda, Bill O'Brien, Lance Leipold, Jim Leonard, PJ Fleck, Chris Kleiman, Dave Doran, Sam Pittman, Alex Grinch, Matt Entz. I don't even know who that is. Brett Bielema, Jamie Chadwell, and Troy Calhoun. The reason I bring this up is not that and like almost, I'd say over half of those guys are current Power 5 head coaches. So they probably wouldn't even go to ASU. But the reason I bring this up is watch for one of these names if and when a coaching move hopefully gets made after this season, because Nebraska will probably get the best candidate, but maybe ASU that gets the second best candidate of these guys. And a guy that I really like, for example, Matt Campbell at Iowa State, he's not going to come here. Mark Stoops at Kentucky, he's not coming here. Dave Aranda at Baylor, not coming here. Bill O'Brien, I wouldn't want him anyway. Like,
we're in the Urban Meyer sweepstakes.
How would you react if we brought in Urban Meyer?
I don't know how anybody could after everything that's happened.
It's crazy because he's not a good guy, and I spoke about this on the last show for a litany of reasons. Like, we all know why if you're following college football. Just skeevy, and just the typical like obnoxious college football coach that looks the other way on a lot of bad stuff. But he also wins like everywhere he goes in college. And so I don't think it's going to happen with Urban, but it would be interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's a big name. I mean,
he would love Mill.
There'd be a lot of videos of him entertaining female company.
Could you imagine him like after a big win just going on a party bus up to Scottsdale?
He would
He's
be
like sticking his head out the window of the upper latch they have there.
He would be a regular at Varsity Tavern.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. He'd be in the dance floor. One of those bad techno bands.
Yeah, I feel like Mill is probably more Urban Meyer's speed than Old Town, though.
That's true.
Like, I feel like he would just, go bum around on Mill on one of the two bars that are still open, and call it a night with not his wife.
For sure. And granted, he's not the only college football coach that would do something like that. Anyway.
There's no way, Mark. Every other college football coach is a virtuous and faithful man.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the coaching list. Probably not Urban Meyer, but he lists Bill O'Brien for Nebraska. I mean, Lance Leipold at Kansas, and Kansas is 2-0. I think that would be, if ASU could get Lance Leipold, that would be sweet. I don't think he would leave ASU. Jim Leonard, Wisconsin defensive coordinator. I would not hate that for ASU, because that's the type of move that you could actually see happening too, because he hasn't been a head coach before, and you can still trot out all the NFL pro model stuff because he played for the Jets recently. Wonder if Herm Edwards coached them. I don't think they overlapped, but he was on like the Rex Ryan Jet. But anyway, Jim Leonard, that's a name to watch for. PJ Fleck at Minnesota, he's not coming here. Chris Kleiman at K-State, I doubt that he would come here. Dave Doran at NC State. I don't even know why some of these guys would leave their jobs for Nebraska. He's not coming here. Sam Pittman at Arkansas, not coming here. Alex Grinch is USC's defensive coordinator. I mean, maybe. Matt Entz, I don't even know who that is. Brett Bielema at Illinois, I don't see him leaving the Big Ten. Then Jamie Chadwell at Coastal Carolina. If ASU could get him, that would be awesome. I would love to have him.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard when you're looking at these names and you're thinking like, oh yeah, like but I guess I feel like Nebraska isn't this like glamorous place anymore either. It's kind of like a Texas where it's like
it is.
Yeah. You know, Texas was great at one point, you know, and now it's kind of like,
hey, they almost beat Alabama. They almost won.
Dude, I was watching that game and
it was crazy.
That end, that whiffed on that sack had to.
Oh, I think it was a linebacker, but
yeah, whoever was rushing and whiffed on that sack. But yeah, you know, they're kind of in that Texas territory where it's like, oh yeah, they were once great, and I feel like a lot of coaches kind of have that in mind, like that. Or it would make sense if coaches had that goal to return the once prominent school back to relevance or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like a lot of these guys are probably happy. Like a guy like Jamie Chadwell has completely built that program, you know?
Yeah, like, but that's true. But I mean, these guys at the lower level leave eventually most of the time.
That's true. But, you know, look at like.
I just don't think he would leave for Nebraska.
Look at Scott Frost. You know, he was like the hottest coaching candidate in that, you know, after the
cycle,
UCF won the national championship or whatever, you know,
he won. Yeah, you know, he won a national championship. In the 90s.
No, I'm saying when UCF went undefeated and they said
right.
we're actually the national champions. And then he left. Or was that? No, that wasn't Hoople yet. That was still Frost. And then they hired Hoople, and now Hoople's at, or Hopel, however you say his name. Heupel is now at
Josh
Hoople. It looks like Hoople.
No, I know it kind of does.
I didn't know this was a phonetics podcast, Mark.
I didn't even know you were talking.
We were practicing phonics on the show tonight. But yeah, you know, it makes sense. But Scott Frost is going to be kind of a cautionary tale. It's like, yeah, go jump ship to try to build a program. Yeah. It doesn't always work out. So.
Well, but the reason why Nebraska and Texas are still more attractive than ASU is just because they just have so much more money. Like
yeah,
Nebraska paid Scott Frost $15 million to F off. Like, yeah. And if they and by the way, if they waited till October 1st to fire him, they couldn't even wait like half a month or maybe 3 weeks when he was actually fired. They couldn't even wait that long, and they would have saved like $7.5 million. But in the Big Ten at Nebraska, you just have so much money, it doesn't matter. So, but Colton, you're right about a lot of these names on here, in that I don't think they're going to leave for Nebraska anyway. Like Matt Campbell, he's had so many opportunities to leave Iowa State. I don't think maybe he goes for Nebraska. I don't know.
I feel like he was even mentioned in like NFL head coaching hire cycles.
The Lions offered him like a huge deal, and he turned it down. And so I think people just need to realize he's probably not leaving Iowa State. Mark Stoops at Kentucky, he has Kentucky rolling right now, and he's in the SEC. Like, I don't think he would leave for Nebraska that has been just bad this whole decade, or since 2010, basically. Since
in a Big Ten that is now adding USC and UCLA.
Yes.
Yeah. And the road gets even more difficult.
Like, the only reason if you're Dave Aranda is for money, but I would rather be the head coach at Baylor than Nebraska because it's easier to win the Big 12, and there's not, like, you can go. There's just less crazy of a fan base in that sense.
Yeah, and you'd have to consider job security too. Obviously, I mean, exactly. If you're leaving one of these schools, somebody's going to throw a ton of money at you, and you're going to have a huge buyout in your deal. But you know, if you want to leave, it's probably so that you can try to build this team back to what it was. But you're probably not going to have enough time to do that, especially when your conference is strengthened. Like
Yeah, for sure.
you have to consider that as well. The big name that jumps out to me here is Bill O'Brien. Like it's always those. I don't want to say disgraced, but you look at like Steve Sarkisian and Bill O'Brien and these guys that just joined Alabama staff.
Mildly
Lane Kiffin
disgraced.
is another
How's
one.
that?
What'd you say?
Mildly disgraced.
Yeah, I mean, like Lane Kiffin too. Obviously
Right.
not disgraced, but got fired from USC and everything that happened with him. Now he's the head coach at Ole Miss. Sark is obviously the head coach
Texas.
at Texas. So Bill O'Brien is a name that makes sense on that list. He's obviously done it before at the
And
college
he
level.
wasn't, he wasn't terrible at Penn State.
No, he was
People just,
terrible as a GM, but you
exactly.
don't
And the
have to trade players in college. So
yes. And one thing Bill O'Brien always kind of suffered from in the NFL, even though he was like taking like 9-7 Texans teams to the playoffs that didn't have a quarterback, like he was just an asshole. And so just people just are naturally not going to like you as much.
yeah,
He's kind of the Brian Kelly of the NFL, except Brian Kelly's a little more successful, but because he
yeah, and I
made,
mean Bill
but
O'Brien is probably regulated to college now, or relegated rather,
yeah,
relegated to college now anyway. No NFL team is going to touch him again, I don't think.
I don't think
Um,
he's an option for ASU. I don't think if you're ASU, you go to two former
no,
owners.
no, I'm saying for Nebraska, which I
Yeah,
guess kind of got derailed on the point, but to loop this back around to like an ASU centric angle. Um, that would be the only name that makes sense for Nebraska if I'm looking at this list from Pete Thamel, which would mean any other name other than I guess
yeah,
coaches who get fired could be in play for ASU. But none of the other names on that list make sense for
yeah.
Nebraska. I think Bill O'Brien stands out the most.
Well, and exactly. So who knows what Nebraska does? Honestly, I don't really care. I kind of like it when Nebraska's bad. I think it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's kind of
Um,
funny.
it is funny. It's for whatever reason, it just is. Um, the only two from so Troy Calhoun is the last one. He's at Air Force.
Yeah,
The reason I didn't really mention with ASU, I don't remember exactly what it was, but he's had some weird stuff come out, weird comments when he was kind of in the running for another Power Five job. So I don't really want him. Um, Chadwell is who I'm really leaning in on, or Jim Leonard. Those are the two from this Pete Thamel tweet. That like obviously it's a tweet about Nebraska, but it's saying who are the second tier guys on the list that an ASU could swoop in and take, and maybe he's an up and comer. Um, a few other names to mention for a potential ASU head coaching change at the end of the season would be it would be so sweet if we could get guy in the Panthers, Matt Rule. If we get Matt Rule, even if it's only for like 3 years, that would be 100% worth it. I don't care that he's technically he's from the NFL, but he's made a success coaching college at Temple and Baylor.
yeah,
So he
that
would
is
be.
true. I'm gonna look.
I feel like I feel like if you're Nebraska, that's who you want the most is Matt Rule. Um, and this one I think is my number one choice if I could just pick any reality. I want Deion
Oh,
Sanders,
yeah, Sanders.
Arizona State head coach. Jackson State is legitimately like a really good FCS team now. Like I I would love for
Coach
Deion
Prime.
to I well because think of so much of college like coaching of being a head coach isn't even really about it's not about the X's and O's or just about being kind of a salesman, you know?
I mean, he got Travis Hunter to
Personality.
go there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
So
kind of like what ASU wanted to do with Herm Edwards, but
yes, yes.
Jackson State.
But the problem is the people who
Actually, it
made the
actually
ASU
made
decision
sense. Yeah,
were middle-aged
ASU
men who,
ASU botched what they were trying to do, and Jackson State just did it right.
yeah. So, hey, maybe ASU can hire
Try
Deion.
again
Yeah, exactly.
and get
I
Coach
don't know who
Prime.
they'll get if they get anyone. I could very well. Oh gosh, I don't know. Or like, hey, maybe we have an internal promotion.
Yeah,
Robert
that's what
Rodriguez,
seems like the most likely scenario is an internal promotion.
Shawnee
But who
Wano,
knows?
running back coach, former Chandler coach, has connections. I wouldn't hate that. I
Yeah,
would not hate that.
running backs have performed extremely well.
Yeah.
Obviously, has those guys ready to play.
Yep.
I guess what makes the most sense, just based on the last, hiring cycle and everything, is promoting from within, and especially, ASU has to kind of look around and see all of the guys that coached under Todd Graham now holding prominent positions around college
A lot of
football,
them, yeah.
and think like maybe there's a viable candidate in our building right now. Maybe we should look at those guys a little,
Yeah.
with a little more intent, I guess.
And one
Not
thing
that
to
they
remember,
didn't, but
with a coaching search is there's not one like way that you should hire a head coach. It's kind of random. Like when
mhm.
Scott Frost was hired, that was an A+ hire. And you know what? It still was based on their decision making. Like they hired a guy who went 12-0, and he is from Nebraska. He has, a cool offense. Like it just didn't work out, but I would have done it again, And so knowing what we know, I mean, we don't know the inside information or anything, but
I wonder if Ray Anderson. No, they probably didn't overlap. Like, I wonder if Ray Anderson ever worked with Deion Sanders
probably not. But
when he was working in the NFL.
I bet they've met each other at some point.
Oh, for sure. Let's see.
So
I don't know.
I mean,
I'm gonna look into this.
the guy at Marshall too, Charles Huff. Um, I think he's been. I'm gonna look this up too. So Marshall over the weekend they beat Notre Dame in Notre Dame Stadium, and if you watch the game, it wasn't even like it didn't look like Marshall pulled it out of their ass to win. It was a very well played game. Yeah, so Charles Huff, he is in his second year at Marshall, 9-6 record, 2-0 this year, so that means they went 7-6 last year. But the thing that really intrigues me is he has been an assistant, a running backs coach at Penn State, at Mississippi State, at Alabama in all since 2014. So that means he's had to recruit awesome players to be at their school. Because if you're at Penn State and you're at Alabama, you have to be in on the best players to come to your school. And if you're at Mississippi State, you still have to be in on pretty dang good players too. So, he also he only has 1 year. He was an assistant running
Let's
back
get Mike
in
Leach.
2012. Mike Leach, he's not leaving the SEC.
Oh, I know. That'd be magic.
Yeah, that would have been fun in the past. But the thing is with the coach, I think ultimately hire whoever's the best coach. But if it's a tie, go with the guy with the exciting offense. Because if it's a tie, because we know this fan base, you need to give them some sizzle as well. And if you're, running the air raid or something like that, or whatever, just some other type of fun offense like Jamie Chadwell does, it's kind of a twist on the option what they do at Coastal Carolina. That will bring some attention in, and
Yeah.
the quicker, if you make a totally different move than Herm Edwards, it just totally changes the feel about ASU football. And like we've seen it with USC. I mean, USC football this time last year was feeling worse than we feel now about ASU football,
Speaking of USC, who would be interesting is Graham Harrell.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would ever happen, but
I just don't know if he's that good, because I don't think USC's off, because he's not on USC anymore.
No, I know he's on West Virginia, but
and they're 0-2.
Yeah, but they score. I don't know. I'm just Googling names.
No, I mean, it's not the worst. Yeah, it's not the worst idea.
We have to build a staff, okay? But still, I don't know. You want to get a guy in there that maybe is a little younger.
Well, yeah, you definitely want that.
He's been in the Pac-12 before.
That's true.
So,
there is potential.
yeah.
So we'll see. There'll be a lot of names to watch in the coming months. And Robert Rodriguez, defensive line coach, Sean Aguano, those are two that pop out on the ASU staff. And those
internal hires.
Those are probably ASU's two best position groups too. if you think about it.
Definitely.
So, and position groups of guys who actually like committed here too, not just transfers. So anyway,
Yeah. Iguana would be cool. That'd be a really cool story for like a
and the
local
thing
high
with
school
Iguana, I
guy.
mean, I mentioned this. He knows all the high school coaches,
Yeah.
especially the ones in the East Valley where you really have to recruit. So that's another thing, and you can kind of reestablish uh, a more Arizona-centric recruiting approach because the Cali Devils thing under Antonio Pierce, it was cool when it was working. Once it stopped working, now you still have the reputation of Cali Devils and ignoring ASU kids, but you're also not getting from California.
What about Graham Harrell and we start a new charge called the West Virginia Devils, and he just recruits from his own backyard?
West Arizona Devils.
Yeah. Well, speaking of West Virginia, all right, they lost 38-31 to, at the time, number 17 Pitt. All right. Then they lost 55-42. Graham Harrell doesn't run the defense, Mark.
I understand. You know,
He
that's true.
scores points. He's underrated. All right. I'm a big Graham Harrell guy now.
Oh boy. All right. Well, next year when ASU has Graham Harrell leading the charge, you heard it here first.
Yeah, take the soundbite
You
from
heard it here
our
first.
show.
That's right. I'll dig back into the archives. All right. Well, that kind of wraps up episode 10. Colton, you got any final thoughts?
Not really. Just a pleasure to be back. I hope to never sleep through the show again. So it's great to be on another one with you, Mark.
Yeah. Hey, I didn't. I just said you weren't able to make it. I didn't give him a reason. So.
You didn't go into details. I appreciate that. Well, yeah, folks, I slept through the show. That's what happened.
Hey, we've all been there. All right. Well, that wraps up episode 10, and go Devils.